All right, so let's start to put together some of the ideas that we've been learning in previous videos and sort of find out how they mesh together. I've got a badly drawn Earth, but I do know that on my Earth, I have a line of longitude that is the prime meridian. And I know that there's 24 other meridians around the globe, right, etc., etc. I know there's 15 degrees of longitude between each meridian, okay? Now think about time. I also know that I've got time zones. And from previous videos, we know that if we move east of the prime meridian, we add 1 hour for every meridian. If we go west of the prime meridian, we go minus an hour for every meridian. So we go around the backside of the Earth and we meet at the international date line. So let's start to think about what this means. Now I've got, not only have I got degrees, but I've also got hours. So in other words, if I do one lap of the globe, I've done 360 degrees. I also know that around one lap of the globe, there's 24 hours because of my 24 time zones. So that would mean for every meridian, so in other words, for every 15 degrees is 1 hour. There's 24 meridians, 24 hours. I know a meridian is 15 degrees. So in other words, 1 degree equals 4 minutes change in time zone. So now I can start to answer some questions about time differences between locations or between longitudes using this information, knowing that, well, for every degree difference there is in longitude, I can account for 4 minutes of different time. So we're not talking about time zones here, we're actually talking about the distance apart and applying this knowledge that we've figured out from the fact that every degree is going to be 4 minutes difference in time. So let's have a look at some examples. Sydney, the coordinates are 34 degrees south, 151 degrees east, and we've got Perth, one of my other favourite cities, over here at 32 degrees south, 116 degrees east. Now, we want to use the longitudes, not the latitudes. So it doesn't really matter about the first value, okay? We only want to look at the longitude, the distance or the difference in degrees going across the globe this way. So Sydney's at 151 degrees east. I'm going to take away 116 degrees east. There is a difference between the two of 35 degrees, okay, from 151 back to 116. Now, from our previous little bit of info, we said 1 degree equals 4 minutes. So I can say the time difference here then is 35 lots of 4 minutes. 35 degrees times 4 minutes per degree is 140 minutes, or in other words, 2 hours, 20 minutes. So if we were asked for the time difference between two locations, but we weren't given time zone info, we were given coordinates, then we could work out a time difference using those based on that. All right, so here's the kind of question you could also get. We've got the coordinates for Johannesburg, South Africa, and Chicago in the USA. What time would it be in Chicago if it was 10 p.m. in Johannesburg? Now, if you were given time zone information, you could work this out using the time zones like we've done in previous lessons, but this time we're only given the coordinates. So let's use that same idea. I need to find the difference between the two longitudes. Now, the problem is, this one is east of the prime meridian and this one is west. So here's a little trick, a little tip, is almost draw yourself up a bit of a number line. And so let's put 0 degrees here. So that's our prime meridian. I know that Johannesburg is, say, 28 degrees to the east. Okay, let's label those east and west. Okay, I'm given the longitude is 28 degrees east. I know Chicago is 88 degrees to the west. So I need to find this value here, this total number of degrees difference between the two. Well, that's just simply 88 plus 28, which works out to be, what, 116 degrees. So there's 116 degrees difference in longitude between those two places. I know that 1 degree equals 4 minutes. So I take 116 degrees times 4 and I get 464 minutes, which works out to be about close enough to 7.8 hours. All right, so 7.8 hours difference. In other words, remember our times to the east are in front of our times to the west. So Johannesburg, in this question, we can approximate is 7.8 hours in front of Chicago. So we've worked out the time difference at 7.8 hours, but what is 7.8 hours in hours and minutes? So here's a little trick. Just if you haven't seen this before on, say, your scientific calculator, you can take this 7.8 and work out what that is in hours and minutes by simply doing this. Here's the buttons that I would press. I would press 7.8, and then you've got this little degrees, minutes, seconds buttons. Depending on your calculator, it might look like that, or it might say DMS. And then I'm going to hit the equals buttons, and I'm going to get a result on the one I'm using, which is the Casio FX82, and it's going to say 7 degrees 48 minutes, which I could say is 7 hours 48 minutes. So in other words, this is actually 7 hours and 48 minutes. So come back from 10 o'clock or 10 p.m. in Johannesburg, come back to Chicago time. We're taking away 7 hours 48 minutes. 7 hours away from that will get me back to, so minus 7 will get me back to what, 3 p.m. Come back another 48 minutes, and it's actually 2:12 p.m. in Chicago.